Voyage.
Welcome to Allegedly. I'm Darren Marlar, your host for all things felonious. When someone allegedly commits a terrible crime, if you don't see it with your own two eyes, you might prefer to believe it didn't happen. In this series, we'll bring you a new crime every time, ranging from familicide to the largest financial scheme in human history, to a would-be love affair gone horribly wrong in the Philippines, and more. Did these crimes really happen as they were alleged? You decide. In this first episode, you'll learn of murders so ghastly they captivated the nation in the year 1900. We know because we have the newspaper accounts of the time, including the writings of the killer performed for you by the inimitable Michael Emerson, who you might remember with a bit of a shudder as the eerie Benjamin Linus from the TV series Lost. Welcome to Allegedly.
My name is Amy Steidinger. Today, I'm a teacher, historian, and author, but in 1994 I was working as a genealogist when I came across this story. On May 13, 1900, my husband's great-uncle, a man who had been a member of a devout Amish community, murdered his wife and children. I've been on a journey these last 25 years to find out what really happened. How could he do this, and why? I was helping my husband's aunts put together a family book. The religious group the family belonged to is known for having very large pages. I had been working for hours, reading the records that consisted of pages and pages, showing fathers, mothers, and often 10 or 12 children, filling the pages from top to bottom. Next, I turned a page, when suddenly there was only blank space. Here, there was a father, a mother, and their 3 children. The young mother and her 3 children had all died on the same day, May 13th, 1900. My first reaction was, that poor man, to lose his entire family. I tried to imagine what could have happened. Surely even illness wouldn't take them that quickly. So I called the aunts who were helping me with the family book. They had been helping me, calling back and forth, talking to me about the information, excited about this project. But when they heard my question, they said, "We don't talk about that," and they hung up on me. I was surprised by their response, but I'm not sure anything could have made me more curious. I wanted to know what happened, so I went to the archives and looked up newspaper articles. Here's the first one that I found.
Mrs. Thomas Mosier, wife of a farmer living 3 miles north of Tremont, Illinois, and her 4 small children were found dead in their home Tuesday. All had apparently been dead since Sunday. Their throats were cut from ear to ear. Mrs. Mosier's body was found in the cellar, covered with old carpet. The children lay in their beds upstairs, apparently having been killed as they slept. Mosier has disappeared, but there is no known evidence pointing to him having committed the terrible crime. Nothing has been seen of the family since Sunday, and Tuesday, neighbors broke open the doors of the farmhouse. They spread the alarm, but no trace of the murderer has yet been found, although some of the neighbors are convinced that Mosier wiped out his family in a fit of insanity.
That first article had a lot of errors. It named the father as Thomas instead of Samuel, 4 children instead of 3. The children's ages were wrong. I realized that this small-town newspaper was about 70 miles from Tremont, Illinois, where the murders had taken place. News must have spread by word of mouth. Maybe something like the telephone game? Sam became Thomas. A huge problem, I would imagine, if you're Thomas Mosier. 3 kids became 4, and the details became more grisly. I needed to find more accurate information. It was understandable that his family wouldn't want to talk about it, but I wondered about hers. I found a nephew who had compiled tons of information, including original newspaper articles that were no longer even available in the archives. He was excited to talk with me about the case and see something put together about it. The actual story was very different from that first article. Samuel was a very troubled man. He had been excommunicated by the Anabaptist church that he attended. He was not allowed to eat with his family and friends. He was not allowed to work for members of the church. People would cross the street when they saw him coming. He was originally punished because he was bouncing his child on his knee in church, disrupting the service. They saw this as idolatry. They saw him as putting his child above the Lord. Later, it was more about his inability to repent and apologize, but this went on for 5 years. As Samuel's children got older, they began to ask questions about why people didn't talk to their dad and why he didn't go to church with them. Sam was extremely depressed. He sought help from doctors, but they were limited in the help that they could provide in 1900. Medication like laudanum that they may have prescribed might have worsened the problem. He became convinced that the situation was destroying his family and that they would be better off if their suffering was ended. He shot each of them. He intended to kill himself as well, but he could not face God after what he'd done. After the killings, Samuel went west to Utah, where he thought he might be able to repent among people that didn't know what had happened. But when he got off the train in Salt Lake City, the headline of the newspaper said that a murderer who was wanted in Illinois was thought to be in Utah. He tried to shoot himself while standing on a bridge, but slipped and fell into the river. When the police intervened, they discovered a suicide note that he'd left in his hotel room.
I am 30 years of age and reside on a farm in Tazewell County, Illinois, 3 miles from Tremont. This trouble is all due to the Amish community I formerly lived with, of which my wife was also a member. 8 years ago, I was married, my wife also belonging to the community. The Amish community is a religious order, having their own church. They do not believe in any worldly pleasures, such as music, going to shows, or anything of that kind. I grew away from their beliefs, but they kept control of my wife, and the church people came between us continually. One time in the church, I took my baby, 8 months old or so, on my lap and was looking at him. The minister rebuked me, saying I was becoming an idolater and thought too much of my child. That is part of the religion, not to care too much for the family. I was not happy in the community, and at last, 2 or 3 years ago, got my wife to leave, and we went away. But they wrote her and got her to go back. I remained away a little while longer, but could not bear to be separated from my children, and so I returned. Then they interfered between us, and peace was broken up in my home. I could not have my friends at my home anymore, and the little boys commenced to notice it. The oldest asked why it was my wife would eat her meals with the boys, and then I would go to the table. The boys asked why it was. It hurt them and hurt me. I tried everything, but matters did not mend. There was no chance for a change. My children noticed the trouble, and this made me very unhappy. There was no chance of any improvement, and I became desperate. On Sunday, May 13, my wife went to church with the children, and I was left alone in the house. Between 4 and 5 o'clock in the afternoon, they returned, and my wife commenced making preparations for supper. The boys were out in the yard, and she went down cellar for something. I followed her down, and as she looked at me, I fired just one shot. She didn't know anything about it. She was dead. I shot her in the head. The eldest boy came in and went into the bedroom, or I took him there. I shot him only once. He died right there, never felt it at all. I called the second boy in and sent him for a bucket of water. When he came in and went into the pantry, I fired again. It didn't kill him at once, and I fired again. That killed him. Then I went back into the bedroom where the baby was lying. Only 6 months old. I fired and hit him, but he moved. I did not want him to suffer and fired 3 times. Then it was all over. Then I went down cellar and threw a carpet over my wife, put some dresses over the other bodies, locked up the house, and left. I did not want them to find the bodies all at once. I am not sorry I killed my wife and children. I am glad they are at rest. I could not bear it any longer, living that way with those people interfering between man and wife and the little boys noticing it. I had to do it. I couldn't do anything else.
After the Salt Lake City police captured Sam, they wired the sheriff of Woodford County, and Samuel was extradited back to Illinois to stand trial for the murder of his wife and children. The trial would be front-page news across the nation for almost a year and a half. Sam also wrote a letter to the Salt Lake City chief of police, which was published in a newspaper.
I wish to say to the people of this world, if there is any truth in the Bible, so by my judgment you are in your last hours. It appears to me that man's doing is appearingly only for that mighty dollar. I do not say this to alarm Salt Lakers in no way, as this city I like. And if I thought I would be safe and never come known that I commit the crime, I would have tried to pull through, but I think there are enough bad people for the sun to shine on too. If I could have got around penalty of death and could have gotten friends and satisfaction, I should have been content with my day's work and meals with a good appetite as long as it reached. Before I would agree to the rule or ruin creed of Amish people of my home, I choose to die. I had been under this circumstance 5 years, with no show of a change unless agreeing to this order. If my wife could have content herself outside of community of these people, and would have respected me as a husband by depriving some of those people, idea this crime had been saved. But their relatives kept her from doing so, and forced their religion, however so, that she should esteem it more than me. It is a hard matter to express all their doctrine and rule. They keep their children ignorant of things of this world by not letting them have music and enjoyment, as many wished to have. They raised them ignorantly, partly, and after they become old, many are not fit for law and rule of this world. I beg to say to the people of this world to destroy and clean the face of the earth of all such ministers, interferers between man and wife.
Sam was also interviewed by reporters while he was in custody prior to the trial. They asked him if he had any remorse. He said,
"No, only that I am here. I did all I could to kill myself, and I don't see how it is I am here. It must be God's hand that he didn't want me to die yet. I am not sorry for my wife. She is at rest. They are all out of trouble."
Sam said he did not regret the killings, but he broke into tears several times while talking to the reporters. And reading between the lines of his comments to the reporters, it's clear that there was remorse for the killing of his family. At one point, he noted,
"My wife said last few weeks, if I not like to stay here, I can go. This, I could not stand. And I thought best we all die and be at rest."
The reporters asked Sam why he didn't simply divorce his wife. Sam said he'd rather die. The newspaper accounts provide us with so much factual information, but also the attitudes and opinions of the day, as well as the actual statements that the lawyers made in court. This is attorney Jesse Black's opening statement.
When the family had gone to church that day, Mosier sat down and began to brood over his troubles and decided that since he wouldn't be ruled by his wife, he would see that they die. He sat in the south room of the house until the family came home. The wife and children came into the house, and Hannah Mosier began preparing the meal. She put the food on the stove to cook and then went into the cellar to obtain something. Sam Mosier saw her go into the cellar, followed her, and as she stooped over, he came up to her and fired the revolver in the back of her head and killed the woman that he had sworn to love and cherish. Not satisfied, he went upstairs and sent the oldest boy out for a bucket of water. He called the other boy into the south bedroom and shot him dead. Then the boy who had gone out for a bucket of water came in and Mosier shot him. The boy made a circle and fell to the floor dead. Then Mosier went to the bed where the little 9-month-old baby slept and shot the little one 3 times until it was dead. Then this man, whom the defense claims to be insane, pasted papers to the window and pulled down the curtain and fled to Tremont, leaving behind him what had once been his family. The prosecution will show by Mosier's own confession that he hid in boxcars so that no one could see him and left at dark on the night train. He took every precaution to cover up his identity, thinking that he could get away from everybody who might know him and thus escape the death penalty. When he reached that city, he purchased a Chicago paper on the street, which told of his crime and his escape. But his guilty conscience hounded him so unmercifully that he, like all cowards, attempted to take his own life. After reading the papers, he wrote letters of his crime and then went to the River Jordan to commit suicide. But so black a scoundrel is he that the holy water of that River Jordan refused to receive that polluted body.
The defense attorney worked hard to elicit sympathy for Mosier in his bid to save his life. His arguments became an indictment of the church that he argued had driven Mosier to his deadly act.
I never realized my utter weakness as I realize it today, as I stand before you in my effort to protect that lonely man as he sits before you. No man ever sat in this courtroom. No man ever came into this courtroom so absolutely unprotected. There was murder done in the little home of Sam Mosier nearly a year ago. And the prisoner now confronting a jury in the Tazewell County Courthouse was the man who pressed the trigger of a revolver that sent his little ones, the little ones that he loved above all, into another world, along with the wife for whom he had labored and worked hard all his years. But it was not Sam Mosier who committed the crime. It was the New Amish Church. It was Benedict Mosier, the wealthy father of the defendant, who destroyed the court of reason and turned the man who, a few years ago, had been a loving, kind husband and father into a demon. Out of heaven, swift and sure will come a punishment on the heads of the New Amish Church. Their lands will be swept away. Their homes will crumble before the just vengeance of God. They will know sorrow and suffering, and in the end, they will shout for mercy. This fate is in store for the New Amish Church. These things will happen, for there is a wise and just God ruling all, and in time, all wrongs that have been heaped on the head of Sam Mosier will be righted.
Blaming the church was a very effective strategy. People were so much persuaded that headlines of the time asked, "Is Samuel Mosier a murderer, or is he a martyr?" Articles and letters to the editor filled pages of the newspapers with arguments and debates for and against Sam and the church. Many people who attended the trial felt very sorry for Sam. Reporters would describe this downcast man who often cried during the testimony. Women who attended the trial would watch him closely and felt badly for him. Hannah's sisters at one point come to the trial with a very young child, which would have been a niece or nephew to Sam. They actually visit with him and allow him to hold the child. It was a very moving scene in the courtroom. The defense put many local people on the stand. people who knew Sam and Hannah, who had attended church with them or worked with Sam. Many people testified about the loving husband that he'd been to Hannah, that he'd helped her with housework and doted on his children. Other church members came forward and told their stories of being shunned and excommunicated. Sam's family was called to testify. Implications were made that insanity ran in his family. It was difficult to tell, though, whether the proof of this only demonstrated that more members of the family had been driven mad by this religious control. Experts were brought in to testify for both the prosecution and the defense about the nature of Sam's mental illness. They discussed when and where he had sought treatment. His father had taken him to several medical professionals trying to get help for him. There were lots of different opinions among these professionals, so many and so different that it was said that it was all just a waste of time. But it provides a sort of time capsule for us from 1901 about what people understood about the human mind and the nature of criminality. Finally, Sam was put on the stand, which of course is what everyone was looking forward to. But it was disappointing to the people who packed the courtroom that day. He didn't say much, and he was removed by his lawyer as soon as possible. He just wasn't going to help himself. After all that, it was time for Attorney Black's closing statement.
This man, gentlemen of the jury, with the blood of his wife, with the blood of his children upon his hands, ought not to be able to sleep. For this man to go free, write it down, gentlemen of the jury, publish it, broadcast that in Tazewell County, men can kill and kill and kill and kill and go scot-free. I want you, in deliberating upon this question, to think of the safety of your own children. I want you to think of your own wives and babies. God knows at what time, at what hour, some man may do as this man has done and come into this court and put up the defense that he was insane. When you go into the jury box to deliberate, before you bring in a verdict, I want you to remember the night of the 13th of May. I want you to remember, in the darkness of the cellar, the dead staring face of the woman, with no company but the rats, as they clamored over her dead body. I want you to remember the faces of those children looking up to that God who gave them life, giving up their lives at the hands of a monster, who Mr. Green tells you should walk forth a free man. God pity you, gentlemen. God pity the state of Illinois if justice in Tazewell County is to be a mockery and a byword, and crime and killing and murder go unpunished forever. I believe, gentlemen of the jury, in the light of the evidence, in the light of the facts, you will stand for the peace of the state, the safety of society, and justice between man and man. I thank you for your patient and kind attention.
The courtroom was standing room only as the trial drew to a close. Here is Attorney Green's closing statement.
Thwarted at every step by the father and mother of that man in procuring testimony on his behalf. Deserted by his family, with the exception of the insane brother and of the other brother, Reuben. Absolutely deserted, absolutely alone, on trial for one of the most infamous crimes, if he was a sane man, that was ever committed in any country. I simply ask you, gentlemen, on his behalf, in passing upon the question of fact involved in this case, keep in mind the evidence, all the evidence that has been introduced before you. Bear in mind the promises that you made in regard to the degree of proof that you would require at the hands of the people in this case. And in my judgment, your path to a verdict in this case is an easy one. You cannot help but say, in your own conscience, guided by this evidence, governed by the law, that that man, under the evidence in this case at your hands, is entitled to an acquittal. And I ask you for that kind of verdict.
Samuel Mosier was sentenced to 21 years in prison. While that may seem like a long time, at this time in history, he would have been lynched in almost any other situation. This was shocking to people. This man could have easily gotten the death penalty at the close of this trial. Most people expected it, but so many people really were convinced that he'd been driven to this madness, at least to some degree, by his treatment by the church. I also researched Sam's time in prison at Joliet State Penitentiary. The archives in Springfield were able to provide a copy of a letter that Samuel wrote to the governor of Illinois.
I take the liberty to inform you that I am incarcerated in penitentiary here at Joliet since March 1901. I believe I am held here not according to law. Is it or is it not illegal to commit a person in this institution without presentment of indictment? I have not seen, nor received, neither was informed of any. Is it legal to hold one under said circumstance? I have nobody to assist me to get my rights. Perhaps it is up to you, my dear sir, to make use of your power of pardonment and restore me to my legal rights. I cannot comply with law by publishing a newspaper and present a petition in what it all calls for. I have no money and no friend. Is there not provision in law for such are at hand? If you have no legal power, or for that matter any other methods or course, to restore me or cause me to be restored to my legal right, please let me know. I was sent from Pekin. Yours truly, Samuel Mosier.
According to prison records, Sam was incarcerated at Joliet Penitentiary for almost 10 years. This was a very difficult place to do time. Convicts were made to work hard, breaking limestone rocks at the quarry. They weren't allowed to speak or look up at people. Sam would have shared a 4-foot by 8-foot cell with another convict. There was no running water and only a bucket for waste. Living conditions there were very primitive and led to prisoners getting sick. In February of 1910, Sam's father wrote to the warden for details about when Sam would be released. It's easy to imagine that there was a lot of stress about what would happen. He could hardly just return to the small town where all this had taken place. On March 14th, Sam was found dead in his prison cell. He had strung together bed sheets and hung himself. I think that he felt he deserved his life in prison. He just couldn't face what would come after. What Sam Mosier did was terrible. What happened to his family was tragic. But the events that led up to the murder are something we can learn from. It's a lesson to all of us that legalism and control in religion, in any church and any faith, can have very dark effects.
This is Dan Benamore. I produced this episode for Voyage Media. I just wanted to let you know that if you want to hear more about this story, Amy's book, So Many Fragile Things, is exhaustively researched and includes tons of more compelling details, more than we could possibly fit into this episode. You can find the book on Amazon. A link is in the show notes. Allegedly is a production of Voyage Media. The series is produced by Nat Mundell, Robert Midas, Dan Benamore, and Adam Prince, in association with Darren Marlar of Weird Darkness, starring Michael Emerson as Samuel, John Cahill as Attorney Black, and David Pinion as Attorney Green. Edited, sound designed, and mixed by Nick Mesite. Original music by Derlis Gonzalez.
Next time on Allegedly, trillions with a T are at stake as one man gets swallowed up in a nebulous deal that implicates entire governments, the CIA, and could upend the world economy. Featuring the vocal talents of Commander Riker himself, Star Trek's Jonathan Frakes. That's next time on Allegedly.